A fire in a bustling Karachi shopping plaza turns into a 5-day nightmare, and what it uncovered was more than just a human tragedy. It's a story of systemic failure that has now ignited a national political firestorm. To really get a grip on what happened, you have to start with the human toll, which is just devastating.
So let's just start with the numbers, because they really paint a grim picture. Over 77, that's how many people are still missing, just gone. Their families are stuck in this awful limbo, just waiting for answers.
Then there's the number we do know, 67. That's the official count of bodies they managed to recover after a grueling 5-day operation. 67 lives confirmed lost.
But this next number, this one is hard to even wrap your head around. 30. In the rubble of a single shop, rescue workers found the remains of 30 different people. It just shows you the absolute horror of what it was like inside that building.
Okay, so a plaza of ash. That's what was left. Let's really dig into what that means, the real human cost of this inferno.
And listen to this quote from Amir Hassan, who's in charge of the DNA lab at Civil Hospital. It's just haunting. He said, "The remains we are receiving are in a terrible state. They turn to powder upon touch. We cannot even get a DNA sample." Can you even imagine? The remains are so fragile they can't even get DNA. So for these families, on top of this unimaginable loss, they might not even get the closure of saying a proper goodbye.
All right, so the big question is, how? How does a small flame turn into a catastrophe of this scale? Well, it turns out it was a tragic perfect storm, a chain reaction of spark, system failure, and stampede.
So according to the initial investigation, it started with something so tragically simple. Kids, maybe playing with a lighter or a match in a flower shop. From there, the fire just took off, catching onto goods and then spreading like wildfire through the electrical wiring. And of course, panic sets in. People are scrambling, trying to get out, causing a stampede. But then, and this is the part that turns this into a full-blown nightmare, the external doors were locked. They were trapped inside.
You see, this wasn't just some freak accident. It was practically a blueprint for disaster. There were 0 fire safety measures in place. None. And get this, shopkeepers were paying 1,500 rupees every single month for maintenance. So when the main exits were blocked, people tried to get to the roof, right? Makes sense. But no, the path was blocked by a grill. And to top it all off, the entire CCTV system destroyed. Any video evidence of what really happened? Just gone. It was just layer upon layer of negligence.
Now, beyond the heartbreaking loss of life, there's a whole other layer to this tragedy, and that's the financial fallout, the absolute destruction of people's livelihoods.
Just try to process this number, 150,000. According to trade leaders, that's how many families depended on this plaza for their income. It wasn't just a building with shops, it was an entire economic ecosystem. And overnight, it was all turned to dust.
But here's where the story takes a really strange turn. Because amidst all that ash and destruction, steel lockers held secrets.
So, for so many shopkeepers, their entire life savings just went up in smoke, literally. But then, rescue teams started pulling these steel lockers from the rubble. And inside, huge amounts of cash, totally untouched by the fire. They're even working to get gold out of 2 jeweler shops buried deep inside. The authorities are promising to return everything they find, which is, a tiny glimmer of hope for a few people in this otherwise completely devastating situation. Okay, so a tragedy like this, it was never going to stay just a local story. The response, or maybe the lack of a response, quickly blew up into this massive political firestorm. And it's a fight that gets to the very heart of how Pakistan is governed.
And to really get what this fight is all about, you need to know about one thing, the 18th Amendment. Basically, back in 2010, this amendment was passed, and it moved a ton of power, including things like city management, from the central federal government down to the individual provinces. So this fire has become ground zero for this huge political clash. On one side, you've got the MQM party. They're looking at this disaster and saying, see, Karachi's local administration has failed completely. We need to scrap the 18th Amendment and put the city back under federal control. But on the other side, you have the PPP, the party running the provincial government, and they're saying, whoa, hold on. This isn't about safety. This is a political attack on our right to govern our own province.
And when I say this got heated, I mean it got really heated. Just listen to this from MQM leader Mustafa Kamal. He said, and I'm quoting here, "This 18th Amendment is committing our genocide. It must be abolished immediately." I mean, using a word like genocide, that just tells you how high the stakes have gotten in the aftermath of this fire.
And that leaves us with this huge, lingering question. The fire at Gul Plaza is out, but it sparked this much bigger political inferno. When a city's systems fail so catastrophically, when tragedy strikes on this scale, who's really responsible? Who has the right, and more importantly, the duty to step in and rebuild?